Money doesn't magically disappear. It escapes through the habits we repeat every day without realizing it. And the hardest part is that those same habits are the ones that silently keep you trapped in poverty. You can work longer hours, you can earn a raise, you can even have extra income, but if these 10 habits persist in your life, money will always slip through your fingers. Today, I'm going to reveal what they are, and I want you to listen carefully because you might discover that some of them are already part of your routine, disguised as something normal. Before I begin, let me know in the comments. Do you feel like you work hard, but your bank account never reflects that effort? If so, write this phrase as your opening statement. I deserve abundance. Because this journey begins with a decision, recognizing what limits us in order to finally build the financial freedom we deserve. Habit 1. Living beyond your means. The most silent enemy of financial stability isn't a lack of income, but the inability to live within what we can realistically afford. It all starts innocently enough. A credit card used to cover a small expense, a quick loan because I'll pay it off next month, or the decision to maintain a lifestyle that reflects more what we want to appear than who we really are. The problem is that these small decisions don't stay small. As the months go by, they become a pattern, and over the years, they become a heavy chain that limits the freedom of thousands of families. The numbers speak for themselves. According to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, more than 40% of Latin American households live in chronic debt. And the most worrying thing is that most of these debts aren't related to medical emergencies, education, or vital needs, but rather to immediate consumer expenses, clothing, electronic devices, cars, dinners, and trips that couldn't be paid for at the time. In other words, the trap of wanting to show off what you don't yet have becomes a financial cage, a cage that steals peace of mind, creates anxiety at the end of each month, and, in many cases, destroys long-term dreams. Imagine for a moment that your money is like water in a container. If you make a small hole in that container every day to show off, sooner or later it will become empty. And when the time comes to need that water for something truly important, like an unexpected event, an investment, or a life project, it won't be there anymore. The solution isn't easy, but it is clear. Learn to differentiate between what you need to live and what you just want to impress. Living within your means doesn't mean living in need. It means living intelligently. It means sowing today to reap tomorrow. Would you rather pretend to be successful now while sinking into debt, or build it quietly to enjoy it in freedom a few years from now? Because the truth is this: those who live by appearances will always be slaves to debt. But those who learn to manage their finances will be masters of their time and their future. Habit 2. Buying things you don't need. Stop for a moment and look around you. Look at your closet, your shelves, your drawers. How many of those items do you actually use frequently? And how many are just sitting there collecting dust, reminding you of an impulsive decision from the past? Most people, without realizing it, turn their home into a museum of unnecessary purchases. Clothes with labels that were never worn, accessories that were worn only once, appliances bought as fads, and digital subscriptions that deduct money month after month even though no one uses them. At first glance, each expense seems small and harmless. $10 here, $20 there, a $5 monthly fee for a service you maybe someday will use. But when they add up, they become a deep hole through which much of your effort slips away. A Deloitte study revealed something shocking. The average consumer spends around 30% of their annual budget on goods or services they rarely use. That 30%, far from being just any number, represents the difference between remaining trapped in debt or taking the first steps toward financial freedom. Let's put it in perspective. If you earn $1,000 a month, that means approximately $300 is lost on things you don't need. In a year, that's $3,600. In a decade, that's $36,000. That money could become the capital for your first business, an investment fund that grows over the years, or the foundation of your financial security. But instead of working for you, it turns into forgotten clothes, unused gadgets, and digital services you never use. Think of your money as seeds. Every peso you spend on unnecessary things is like planting seeds in barren soil. No matter how much you water them, nothing will ever grow. But every peso you choose to care for and allocate to a real purpose becomes a seed planted in fertile ground that sooner or later will bear fruit. The key isn't to stop shopping, but to learn to shop consciously. Ask yourself before every expense, do I really need it, or do I just want it right now? Is this bringing me closer to my financial goals or further away from them? Am I buying out of conviction or because someone convinced me to? Review your home, your bills, and your subscriptions. Eliminate the unnecessary. What may initially feel like a loss is actually liberating. You're freeing up physical, mental, and financial space for what truly matters. The money you waste today on things you don't need tomorrow will be the same money you'll need for an opportunity that could change your life. Habit 3. Giving in to impulse purchases. Impulse purchases are one of the most silent enemies of financial health. They don't present themselves as big decisions, but rather as small temptations disguised as opportunities. Flash sales, today-only deals, bright ads that pop up on your screen just when you're most vulnerable. And behind every promotion is an army of psychologists and marketing strategists who know exactly how to activate the emotional buttons in your mind. They use words like urgency, exclusivity, limited discount, all designed to make you act without thinking. At first glance, an impulse purchase may seem harmless. A gourmet coffee, an accessory that only cost a few dollars, an item of clothing on clearance. But the real trap lies in the repetition. What is $10 or $20 today, multiplied by 100 decisions throughout the year, easily turns into more than $1,000 or $2,000 that disappear without leaving a real mark on your life. Now, the danger increases when these purchases are made with a credit card. Because plastic has a very strong psychological power. It gives you the illusion of abundance, as if money were infinite. However, behind that illusion lies a costly reality. Interest that, if not paid immediately, accumulates and snowballs. According to data from the World Bank, in Latin America, the average credit card interest rate exceeds 30% annually. That means a $100 purchase can end up costing $130 or more if you don't pay on time. And if it becomes a habit, impulse purchases not only steal your money, but also mortgage your future. Remember something essential. A promotion isn't a savings if you buy something you didn't need in the first place. Imagine for a moment that every time you make an impulse purchase, you're giving up a part of your future freedom in exchange for a few seconds of satisfaction. Because that's what's really happening. You trade a moment of pleasure for months, even years of effort to pay. The key is learning to stop. Before every purchase, ask yourself 3 simple questions. 1. Do I really need it? 2. Can I afford it without going into debt? 3. Will I still value it in 6 months? If the answer is no to any of these, the wisest thing to do is wait. True financial opportunities aren't those found in storefronts, but those you build with discipline, patience, and a long-term vision. Habit 4. Not planning your spending. Living without a financial plan is like sailing the open sea without a compass. You can row with all your might, but you'll never know where you're headed or why, and at the end of the month, you end up exhausted and without resources. Most people don't know exactly where their money goes. They receive their paycheck, pay a few bills, make purchases here and there, and in the end, all they're left with is the feeling that there's never enough money. But that perception doesn't come from a lack of income, but from a lack of direction. Various studies show that people who keep a monthly budget manage to save an average of 20% more than those who don't. And that 20% can be the difference between remaining trapped in the cycle of debt or starting to build a future of abundance. It's not about having sophisticated software or an app with complex graphics. Financial discipline starts with the simplest things: a notebook, a pencil, and the habit of writing down every income and expense. Because what's measured is controlled, and what you control improves. Imagine your money like water running through a pipe. If you don't control it, it leaks through small cracks until it's completely empty. But when you install valves and regulate its flow, you can direct it where it really matters: paying off debts, saving, investing, and above all, living with peace of mind. A budget isn't a limitation, it's a roadmap. It's not designed to take away your freedom, but to empower you. It allows you to clearly decide what's worth your money and what isn't, and it prevents urgencies or impulses from making decisions for you. Some people think planning expenses is unnecessary because they already know what they're spending on. But the human mind tends to underestimate small expenditures. Things that seem irrelevant, like your daily coffee, your music app, or an extra transportation expense, add up. And at the end of the month, those little things add up to more than you imagine. The difference between those who make progress and those who stagnate isn't how much they earn, but how they manage what they earn. Even someone with a modest income can progress if they know how to plan, while those who earn a lot without control end up living with financial anxiety. To cement this habit, leave the phrase in the comments: "Nothing stops me, everything drives me." Because every penny you plan consciously is one step closer to your freedom and a boost toward the life you truly deserve. Habit 5. Not saving consistently. One of the most repeated phrases regarding money is, "When I earn more, I'll start saving." But that's a dangerous illusion, because saving doesn't depend on how much you earn, but on how much you're able to set aside with discipline. If you don't learn to set aside money when you have little, you won't do it when you have a lot either. Saving is, in essence, mental training. It's the ability to postpone immediate gratification for a greater reward in the future. And that muscle only strengthens with constant practice. The mistake is believing that saving is only useful when it's large. The reality is that even small amounts, added up with discipline, can turn into powerful sums thanks to compound interest. To put that into perspective, if you set aside 10% of a $500 income per month, you'll have $600 at the end of the year. But if you maintain that habit for 10 years without touching that money and with an average return of 5% per year, the figure will grow to more than $7,700. And that's starting from a modest income. Now imagine the same thing on a larger scale. If instead of $50, you manage to set aside $200 each month for 20 years, you could be talking about a fund of more than $80,000. It's not magic, it's math. Money works silently, but only if you give it the time and perseverance to do so. Therefore, saving is not an option. It's the foundation of all financial freedom. Without savings, there is no possible investment, no security, no peace of mind. It's like trying to build a house without a foundation. No matter how many walls you put up, sooner or later, it will collapse. Saving also has a powerful psychological effect. It gives you control. Knowing you have a fund for emergencies, for opportunities, or simply for your family's peace of mind changes your relationship with money. You go from living in fear to living with confidence. And most importantly, saving isn't a punishment, it's a declaration. Every time you set aside a percentage of your income, you're telling yourself, "I deserve a better future, and I'm building it today." Habit 6. Relying on a single source of income. Imagine that your financial stability is supported by a single pillar. It could be your job, your main business, or a permanent contract. As long as that pillar is firm, everything seems under control. But all it takes is an unexpected economic downturn, a layoff, an illness, or even a simple mistake along the way for that single foundation to crumble and take everything you've built with it. Dependence on a single source of income is, in practice, a huge vulnerability. And the strangest thing is that most people accept it as normal. They believe that a good job is enough when, in reality, it's walking on thin ice. According to the U.S. Federal Reserve, more than 40% of adults couldn't cover an unexpected expense of $400 without going into debt. The main reason? It's not that they don't work, but that they depend exclusively on a single source of income, and any disruption leaves them unprotected. The average millionaire doesn't rely on a single source. Various studies confirm that high net worth individuals have at least 7 sources of income: stock market investments, side businesses, real estate, intellectual property royalties, digital income, consulting, and dividends. It's not about luck, it's about strategy. Now, you don't need 7 sources of income to get started. Just think of 2. A side hustle, a digital venture, a freelance service, a small monthly investment that over time becomes an additional stream. The important thing isn't the initial amount, but the habit of diversifying. The right mindset is this: your salary should be the engine that finances new sources of income. If each month you set aside a portion of what you earn to build another path, whether it's learning a profitable skill, opening an online business, or starting a modest investment, you are sowing independence. Relying on a single source is walking on one leg. Having 2, 3, or more means starting a confident run toward a more solid future. Habit 7. Not investing in your financial education. Money has an invisible rule. It flows to those who know how to manage it, and it flees from those who ignore it. You can work hard, earn well, even have a stroke of luck and obtain large sums of money. But if you don't know how to manage it, that money evaporates as quickly as it arrived. 70% of people who win the lottery lose all their money in less than 5 years. How is it possible that someone who receives millions ends up bankrupt? The answer isn't luck, but a lack of financial education. Without knowledge, money turns to sand between your fingers. Financial education isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Understanding how interest rates work, how to protect yourself from toxic debt, how to save wisely, and how to invest strategically is what makes the difference between those who build lasting wealth and those trapped in cycles of scarcity. Investing in knowledge is the investment with the highest return. A course, a book, a mentor, even a conversation with someone who knows more than you can give you tools that will multiply your money throughout your life. On the other hand, living without financial education is like trying to drive a race car without ever learning how to drive. Sooner or later, a crash is inevitable. Remember something important. The money you spend on your education will never be an expense. It will always be a seed. Every lesson learned is an asset that no one can take away from you, because it travels with you wherever you go and expands over time. As a reminder that learning opens doors to abundance, leave the following phrase in the comments: I accept success, money, and happiness in my life. Make this thought a declaration of power, because your educated mind will always be your greatest asset. Habit 8. Fearing risk more than poverty. Fear is a natural mechanism. It protects us from danger. It keeps us alert. But in the financial world, that same fear can become the most costly prison. Thousands of people prefer to stay in a job that barely covers the basics rather than risk investing, starting a business, or trying a new source of income. And the most painful thing is that in doing so, they choose a slow and silent poverty. According to the World Bank, more than 60% of workers in Latin America say their monthly income isn't enough to cover unforeseen expenses greater than a month's worth. In other words, they live on a tightrope, and not because they lack the ability, but because they have too much fear. Risk never goes away. Even staying secure in a job has risks: layoffs, inflation, economic crises. The difference lies in which risk you choose: the risk of trying and learning, or the risk of staying still and watching your life dwindle to survival. Poverty is a sure risk, while entrepreneurship, investment, and financial education are risks that open the door to abundance. He who never risks never wins. The key isn't to rush headlong, but to take risks strategically. Start small, learn, diversify, measure, and adjust. Intelligent risk is the bridge to financial freedom. Habit 9. Not surrounding yourself with people with a growth mindset. There's a universal principle. Your environment is your mirror. What you hear, what you see, what you discuss daily ends up shaping your way of thinking, and your way of thinking directs your financial decisions. A Harvard University study on social networks and prosperity concluded that your immediate surroundings influence up to 95% of a person's financial habits. Simply put, if your friends spend recklessly, you're likely to do so too. If your circle believes investing is risky and dangerous, they'll infect you with that same fear. Imagine you want to learn to speak English, but you spend all your time with people who never practice it. No matter how hard you try, your progress will be minimal. The same thing happens with money. If you don't surround yourself with people who talk about projects, investments, growth, and abundance, you'll end up trapped in a scarcity mindset. It's not about leaving your friends or family, but about joining new circles. Seek out communities of entrepreneurs, financial education groups, and people who are one step ahead of you. This positive influence will help you see possibilities where you previously saw only limitations. Wealth isn't just inherited in money, it's also inherited in ideas, conversations, and mindsets. If you absorb thoughts of abundance, sooner or later your wallet will reflect them. Habit 10. Believing that money is the end, not the means. One of the most common mistakes is thinking that money is the ultimate goal. However, money has no value in and of itself. It's just paper and numbers on a screen. Its true power lies in what it allows you to achieve. Freedom, time, experiences, security, and, above all, the ability to live on your own terms. According to a World Happiness Report, people who exceed a certain income level, roughly equivalent to $75,000 a year in developed countries, do not experience a significant increase in happiness from earning more money. What does this tell us? That true abundance is not measured only in bank accounts, but in the conscious use of those resources. If your goal is only to accumulate, you run the risk of becoming a slave to what you so desperately desired. But if you see it as a means, each peso becomes a building block for your future, for your children's education, for the peace of mind of a dignified retirement, for trips that connect you to the world, or for projects that impact others. Money shouldn't be an empty goal, but rather a tool for personal and collective expansion. Ask yourself, what do I want to achieve with it? What concrete freedom do I wish to buy with each saving and investment? That's where true financial motivation is ignited. To close this section and reaffirm your healthy relationship with abundance, write the phrase in the comments, "I am prosperous and I attract wealth." Do this as a reminder that money flows to those who use it purposefully and not as an end in itself. Poverty is not defined only by a lack of resources, but by the unconscious repetition of habits that rob us of our future. Every decision, every expense, every thought adds or subtracts. Today, you have discovered 10 habits that keep you trapped, and also the possibility of breaking them. If any of these lessons resonated with you, it's because you're ready to take the next step. Subscribe and join me on this path to financial freedom. The journey is just beginning.